Hello everyone, my name is Sophie Bide, and today I'll be talking about the gender gap in STEM, or more specifically, what causes it, how it influences those involved, and what work is being done to find a solution. So I remember when I first joined an all-girls robotics team in middle school, I got a lot of comments along the lines of, I didn't think you were the STEM type. And I remember being really surprised by that because anyone who knows me on a deeper level than small talk knows that that couldn't be less true. At the time, I had never gotten below an A in a STEM class, and while I often dreaded history courses, I walked into every math and science class with a spring in my step. And as small as each of these comments seemed, they planted a seed of doubt in my mind. I remember asking myself all the time, is robotics really the place for me? And successes kind of seemed to dull in my eyes, they didn't seem as important anymore, and the failures would stick in the back of my mind, chopping away at my confidence. The first time I was able to recognize and label these emotions as imposter syndrome was when I was elected outreach and marketing captain of my co-ed robotics team sophomore year of high school. On a conscious level, I knew for a fact that I was the best person for the job. I had spent hours upon hours the previous season working on tasks for the old captain while still maintaining my attendance of building and coding meetings at a higher standard than many other members. I put my heart and soul into the team, so why did it feel so strange or even wrong to be recognized for that effort? Frankly, my experience is not unique. Any woman in STEM that you ask can identify one, if not dozens, of experiences with discrimination. The more research I do on the issue of gender equality and inequality in STEM, the more my experiences seem to pale in comparison to the ones of women around me. It's important not to compare struggles with the risk of silencing or invalidating others' experiences, but observing this comparison allowed me to understand how widespread and long-standing this issue really is. No matter where you look, the gender gap in the STEM fields is glaring. This graphic by the National Science Foundation, or NSF, demonstrates the change in female representation in different areas of STEM between 1993 and 2010. The lowest female representation is found in the field of engineering and the highest level of representation in social sciences and psychology. With the exception of the latter, women make up less than half of the workforce in every STEM field studied. Although some improvements can be seen thanks to recent efforts to promote inclusion in STEM, which I'll discuss a little more later, many of the causes of this disparity are still very present in our society today. There are a lot of different factors that play a role in discouraging the involvement of women in STEM, starting from a very young age. At the elementary through high school level, studies have demonstrated that factors of peer pressure, a lack of positive female role models in the fields, and support from parents, teachers, and mentors may have an influence on female involvement in STEM. Another study by Makarova, Arshleman, and Herzog found that gender stereotypes also appear to make an impact early on. After surveying groups of Swiss German secondary school students about their perception of the fields of math, physics, and chemistry, they found the participants strongly associated those fields with traits they considered masculine. Female students were found to be significantly less likely to have a career aspiration in the STEM fields. And interestingly, the female students who saw math, chemistry, and physics as less masculine were more likely to have aspirations in one of those fields than the other girls in the study, suggesting that gender stereotyping may influence future career interest. Another study found that when women were exposed to an article suggesting there was measurable gender bias in the STEM fields, they felt less of a sense of belonging, a more negative attitude, and fewer aspirations in the fields than when they read an article suggesting equal treatment of both genders or no article at all. Their knowledge of gender disparity and potential for discrimination ultimately had a detrimental effect on their perception of both the STEM fields and themselves. This suggests that the persistence of gender disparity may be because of a reciprocal effect. The lack of female figures or support may discourage other women from participating or striving for success in STEM, creating a cycle of underrepresentation. The impacts of the gender gap in STEM are widespread and more often than not harmful to women hoping to pursue those fields. As mentioned before, the very existence of a gender gap in the STEM fields ultimately discourages women from getting involved. In a study conducted by Covenant University in Nigeria, both professors and students were found to attribute masculine traits to science and projected that male students would outperform female students in STEM-related disciplines. In reality, female students had a higher GPA in 75% of fields observed. So while they may make up a minority in STEM, their performance is in no way different than their peers. If anything, it's better. Ultimately, the gender gap continually keeps productive women out of the STEM fields, limiting their potential for future successes and discoveries. There have been a lot of different solutions proposed in the past few decades as the importance of diversity and solving modern problems become more visible, especially to those in power. A study by Ranking and Martin in 2018 suggests that the best places to start with seeking a solution to gender inequality in STEM are influences of socialization, stereotypes, and peers. A popular type of change in recent years has been the growth of organizations like the Society of Women Engineers or the Association of Women in Science, which work to encourage female participation in STEM. For example, a local university chapter of the Society of Women Engineers were the ones who provided the funding and mentorship for my first robotics team. Without that support and opportunity, I may not have been able to discover my passion for the STEM fields nearly as early on. To avoid the influence of stereotyping at a young age, educational strategies are being implemented, with teachers encouraging girls to explore math and science and identifying and combating their own biases so that they don't pass them on to their students. In the same age range, there have been new ideas implemented like summer camps or after-school programs to provide positive STEM experiences for youth, helping spark an interest in STEM early on. Research also suggests that positive role models can make a difference. Girls who are exposed to positive female STEM role models may be more likely to see themselves as capable or interested in STEM careers. One study found that leadership development exercises could be effective in helping women succeed in STEM by molding them into individuals who can work to change the gender inequalities in their schools and workplaces from within. For the most part, these solutions focus on social changes because the gender disparity itself, as mentioned before, is largely attributed to social factors. So while very few argue that there's no gender gap at all, there are some people who believe that it isn't a big deal. So some argue that women are now being given more opportunities in STEM because of efforts to close the gender gap, creating inequality in the other direction. So for example, it's rare to see an all-boys robotics team or a society of male engineers. There are arguments that the disparity is not due to societal factors, but instead a natural lack of STEM interest among women as well. One study demonstrated that regardless of the professional field they're a part of, most women reported very similar levels of workplace discrimination, suggesting that some of the perceived barriers to female participation in STEM may not be exclusive to those fields. However, when it comes down to it, the gender gap in STEM is still ever present and backed by thousands of studies, as well as a long global history of female oppression. The disparity crosses not only barriers of time, but also of education, subject, location, and even distinctions between institutional and individual issues. Every woman deserves the opportunity to pursue her passions, regardless of whether they fit the mold of society. And as well as being an issue of achieving true gender equality in our modern world, work towards inclusion is vital to the continued growth in the STEM fields. As technology advances, our society requires a more diverse set of perspectives to solve more complex problems. And when half the world's population finds themselves pushed away from certain academic fields, it's difficult to progress as a society nearly as much as we could with those added perspectives. The gender gap has gradually been closing thanks to the many efforts previously mentioned, but there's still a long way to go before we fully reach equity in these fields. As a woman in STEM, I hope to spend much of my future working to support this change, whether that means mentoring youth through STEM activities like the robotics club I first began in, supporting my female peers in a college setting, or joining and leading organizations such as the Society of Women Engineers, Women in Aerospace, and Girls Who Code. Thank you so much for your time.